Framed okay? How's my movement?
Yes, excellent.
If I start doing this shit, we're okay.
We're getting it.
All right.
All right, let's sync up here and take it away, Nick.
All right, Portland Loves Pines podcast. We're gonna just stop numbering them now because we've lost a few. We've had some issues, so it's just better to just call it the podcast and move on.
Let's say the
there.
date. Let's give it the date. It's what, March 24th podcast?
24th, March
so.
24th. I'd like to say it's spring, but not quite yet in Portland.
No.
And we're joined by Greg Rucka today.
Hi.
Long time in waiting.
Yeah, it's taken a while to
Between
do
your
this.
schedule, my schedule, and just general busyness.
Yeah. It's been a rough year, man. We've been trying to do this for at least 6 months.
Yeah, probably. And just as we're about to get it to happen, we're like, oh no, I've got this.
Yeah, something
like,
falls up.
I'm sick, which has been the case for this year.
Yeah.
So I usually start off with what I've been brewing. I've been brewing a lot, actually.
Yes, you were just talking about driving your wife out of the house with
Yeah, which is good because for the last, 4 podcasts, I actually hadn't been brewing anything but kombucha. So we launched the Kickstarter with Portland U Brew, and we actually brewed a special beer with them, which was pretty fun. For people that don't know about them, they're a 4-in-1 business. They're a homebrew shop, a brew on premises, a brewery, and a pub.
Are they
in Selwood? They're on Milwaukee Avenue.
Yep. All right. I know exactly where it is.
Had driven by that place a million times, and so finally went in and talked to him, and I was like, yes, we need to do this. So we brew with them, and I just kind of start telling them all my favorite ingredients. And so we mix it together, and I'm like, well, man, it's not really an English, like, Maris Otter is a pretty common base malt in English or Scottish style beers, and I love it. I'm like, okay, let's use that. We add in some biscuit malt, because the two of them just go together. And as we start getting into it, I'm just like, this is an abomination. It's not Scottish, it's not English. And when they put it on tap, they're like, how do we describe this to the customers? And I was like, I don't know. Just tell them it's the Portland Loves Pines beer, and if they like it, they like it.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we'll call it an American amber style. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but it tastes. It was gonna be released during
American amber style.
No, exactly. The style
is the operative
was
word.
so ambiguous, and so as we're getting closer to the Kickstarter and they're gonna release it for the launch, I was thinking about it and I was like, I haven't tasted this yet. Oh shit! Like I've invited a lot of people. This better taste good. So. We get there, we get all set up. I look at him, I'm like, is it good? They're like, yeah, dude, it's actually pretty good. I was like, oh, thank God. Because throughout the week, I started sweating it, and I was like, man, if it's really bad.
Well, it's not a thing you can actually be like, well, we're scrapping that and doing another one right away.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of got me excited about brewing again, just because it had been so long. And so being the... terrible role model I started teaching one of my cousins to brew.
How old is this cousin?
He's 18.
Okay.
Not that bad, but it's been a family tradition.
It's a skill set that will come into play at a legal age, sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I did the same thing with his brother his senior year of high school. Like, I'm the cousin that ruins the other ones.
You're gonna have to make some time to teach me proper home brewing, because I have always been. It's one of those things that I've looked at and been like, I would really like to do this, and I am. I've got 2 kids. I've got all this other stuff I need to, that I'm trying to track in my life. I can barely, I'm behind on every deadline I've got. But it's one of those things where it's like I would like to be able to do this.
Well, maybe sometime I'll schedule some time at the U Brew.
Yeah.
'Cause the thing that's awesome.
Do an online course, man.
Is there's no cleanup. There's no mess. They take care of everything.
For you.
They hold it for you. Like, all of the stuff that I don't like doing, like the cleaning and sanitizing, and It's not that I don't
Yeah, but
like it. It's all a process.
But isn't that part of it? I mean, see, now I can hear it already, because there's going to be the hipster elitist being like, "That's not really home brewing, then."
Oh yeah, no.
You're not doing it yourself. All of it, you have to cry over your sanitation.
Oh,
and
hipsters, the bane of my existence.
We're talking about craft beer. Who's your target audience, man?
Yeah, you can't avoid plaid in Portland.
No.
Take a step
No,
onto the sidewalk.
I think I'm okay right now.
Yeah, we both are.
Yeah.
So I was teaching my younger cousin to brew, and I actually do think that once you have a little more of the appreciation for brewing and you go through that process, like I noticed my older cousin, who's now or will be of legal age in April, like he's a little bit more responsible just because he only wants to brew the beers that he drinks. But it's a lot of work too, so he's got a little more appreciation for what goes into it, and not the goal not just being to get as drunk as humanly possible.
Well, I mean, there are plenty of products on the market that will provide that service at a cheaper cost and quicker.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're crafting your own beer, you are doing that. Any inebriation is a byproduct. It's not the goal. So,
Yeah. So when I was teaching my younger cousin, I was just asked him, what flavors do you like? He's like, I don't know. What flavors can beer have? I was like, well, any. Yeah, I was like, any flavor. He's like, chocolate. I was like, all right.
That's a standard.
Yeah, I
There
was
you
like, done.
Yeah.
We'll do a chocolate stout. So that's what I'm getting him started with. And
So that's the current project?
Yeah.
So how long is that going to take to come to fruition?
It's been fermenting for a week today. I usually do 14 days as my standard.
Yeah.
And depending on the beer, sometimes you want to let it sit on the yeast longer.
Again, because I know nothing about it. And there was a piece of me that was like, well, before I go on, I maybe ought to do some educational reading. But then I was like, yeah, you know what? I was invited, and I guess they're inviting the ignorance too.
Whatever. If
I've got to
you're an
ask.
appreciator, you're on the right track.
And I am for many a year, as you can't tell because I'm wearing baggy clothes. All right. So what's standard fermentation? I mean, what's the window on that?
Well, so you break it down into ales and lagers.
Right.
Lagers are cooler fermenting
Right.
beers. Ales, warmer.
Right.
Warmer fermenting beers can happen a lot faster.
Right.
I've
So
noticed them
because-
being a lot more vigorous.
Right.
So I've had some finish in as few as like 8 days. But I've had some take as long as anywhere from like 14 into like 18. And some of it too is when you kind of want to stop it. Like you can measure how much sugar is left. You take your initial sugar reading,
Right.
and then you take another one, and once it stabilizes, then you kind of know
You have it.
it's
Well,
settled.
and then I would think seasonal. It's going to be affected by season and temp and so on.
It definitely is
Ambient.
in my house.
Are you brewing down in the basement? Or the garage? I mean,
I do the basement in the summer just because our house will. I don't believe in air conditioning just because I'm poor. So
well, it's also Portland.
yeah,
Air conditioning is
you never really need it.
It's such a luxury. It's like, and also I don't know. I mean, our house is it was built in '34.
It's about when mine was built too.
Yeah, and construction of that era was designed to be like, okay, you close these windows, you open these windows, the breeze will come through this way, and the houses regulate pretty well. So
Yeah, our house is built all sorts of wonky though. It's been like one addition after another. We're just like, what is going on here? So I put everything in the basement just because that temperature is relatively constant.
right.
And then I don't have to worry about making a mess either.
Yep.
I got a sump pump down there and just
in case.
hose it
There
in
you
there.
go.
But so I'll probably leave it another week and then I'll bottle it.
Okay.
And you add a little bit of sugar at bottling so that even when you siphon the beer into the bottles, you never get away from all the yeast. And so that's what carbonates it. You've given a little more sugar energy
keeps
to
it
the
going.
yeast, and it ferments in the
And
bottle.
this is that chocolate that
Yeah.
you're doing.
Ideally, if I were at the point I'd have my own kegging system, and I'd do like a nitro tap.
Yeah.
But I don't, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah, well, necessity.
But yeah, the other thing I'm really excited for, actually, my hops just started sprouting, and so hopefully I'll get a big yield this year and be able to.
So when are you harvesting then?
I've got 6 different hops planted, and some of them have different harvesting seasons, actually, I think. I'm not super knowledgeable about hop growing. Like, I know that I can
Is this
grow
the first
them.
time? Is this the first?
It's the second time I've grown them. When I first started growing them, I just thought they looked cool. I was like 14, I think, when I convinced my parents to start letting me grow hops. And I'm sure my dad thought, get this kid to brew beer.
That's
It'll
right.
be perfect.
This is good.
But so I never harvested them then. And last year I planted them so late. I got just a few hop cones from them. So this year, hopefully, things will be better.
And you have plans for your cones already?
No, not necessarily.
You just see what you get?
Yeah, I might just do like a massive IPA, just because I've got a whole bunch of hops. So why not just hop bomb this thing?
I will be interested in that product.
You know, I might be able to push some your way.
That would be good. That would be good.
But yeah, other than that, I have no idea when I'm gonna brew again. I just like, now that I'm back into it, I'm like, oh, I need to do it more often. And I call all the people I know, and they're like, well, yeah, you should be brewing more often. I'm like, well, you want to brew? No,
that's all you.
I'm like, oh. So yeah, that's, I don't know, pretty much.
All right.
Brewing life right now. Was it last weekend, 2 weekends ago, that we shot at Fort George?
Yeah, 2 weekends ago, I think.
2 weekends ago, we went down to Fort George for the first time.
Yeah.
You guys know your beers are there, right?
No, I didn't. Just a moment.
That's funny. No, I didn't. I was wondering as I looked over there and saw yours.
Yeah, no, he came in quiet.
Awesome. He is sneaky.
There you go.
I'm gonna rub right here, but yeah, just when you set them down, try to do it lightly so the mic.
Yeah.
Hence coasters.
Yeah, I actually have a serious problem with putting my drink down too hard. Very evident in our first amnesia one is I'm like, but
One day we'll have a better mic system.
no, whatever. I'm sticking with this forever.
That's good.
I love this.
Yeah, this is good, and I've forgotten what I'm drinking already. What am I drinking again?
Gigantic porter.
This is gigantic porter.
Porter.
Yeah, I haven't actually had I had a porter for the first time in a really long time. A couple nights ago, I had I want to say Porch's porter. That was terrific. But there was a time when all I was drinking was, if I could see through the beer, I wouldn't drink it.
That's very much how I was for a long time.
There was a period, especially in college, where I was like, no, I don't want a bock. Give me a double bock, you know. And then I don't know what happened. At a certain point, I encountered the Bridgeport IPA, the India IPA, and that was it. I was just like, no, just IPAs,
Just
IPAs. Just IPAs. It's interesting how your palate changes and
over
and what
time,
you want.
like crazy.
Yeah. Well,
because
my son went to Amsterdam and Berlin last summer with my dad. So you can see, and he came back and he was like, "Turns out I like beer." And I was like, "Yeah, you like Grandpa's beer." Well, we'll discuss this once you are.
Let me give you a proper introduction.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about this more later. So,
it wasn't until 2 years ago, that I started drinking lighter beers. I like the full flavor of darker ones, and as I started brewing a lot more, I got a greater appreciation for really good tasting light beers. Because I think that's, I mean, not just in macro beer, but just in general, even microbrewers and light beer, like it's a light beer. It's a pale ale that, it kind of tastes hoppy, but it just not a lot to it. And this was actually the first one, this Czech Pils from Lagunitas.
And that was like...
It's malty, like you taste that Pilsner malt. Yeah. And I just loved it. And so from then on, like I started trying to taste all sorts of a lot more European style lagers. And Heater Allen out in McMinnville only does traditional German style beer. So if you're looking for...
Yeah, I've sort of come back around. And it's weird because, we were talking about this before the camera came on. But, Widmer is doing a beer that supports the Timbers Army, the 107s. They've got a green and gold Kolsch.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, they had a contest.
Yeah, they do it every year.
Yeah, it was a home brewer.
And they take the recipes and then they do it. And,
which is so awesome.
It is. I trust the fix is not in on that. It was an excellent. This was. I got a bottle of it and I was like, this is pretty good, but it's so far. Like I said, I know I don't know much about art, but I know what I like, and it was the Kolsch is such a cleaner and relatively milder taste to the hoppiness that I like in an IPA, and I was surprised actually how much I liked it. And
that
of course,
switch occasionally.
It is. Just every now and then you need to change it up, and I think everybody, on some level, we're all creatures of habit. We find what we like, and
yeah, for sure.
We talk about being in our comfort zone or being outside of it. So it was weird because, like I said, I started drinking this, and I was like, hey, and now all of a sudden I'm trying to do beers again. And all I had in the fridge for a while was either the Bridgeport IPA or the Ninkasi.
Which one? They've got...
I like. I actually find the Tricera hops a little. That's a little much for me.
I love
but
that.
But the Total
one.
Domination,
also a good one.
I
too.
love that. I love the Total Domination.
I love the Tricera hops. The first time I ever had it, I was at a pool hall, and this guy, which totally stereotyping me, comes up to me. He's like, "You're gonna like this beer," and I'm like, "What's that mean?" He's like, "It smells like the freshest herb. Like you just open up a bag of it." I was like, "Man, like what image am I putting off to you that you like?" Whether or not that's true.
Yeah. all on the side. What makes you? Have we met? Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, yeah, I'll try it. And of course, I loved it. I was just like, whoa.
I'm trying to remember. I think the first time I had the Tricera hops, I had that effect where you drink it and you get that, just at the jaw, that sort of dig in where you're like, oh man. And
yeah.
That was when I was like, yeah, that one I got to pace myself on.
Yeah. Well, and it's a pretty strong one too.
It is.
I think
it is.
Like 7.4 or something.
Yeah, there is there's some alcohol contained.
The thing I've been moving towards recently has been sessionable beers. I'm just like, God, I would love to be able to drink 4 of these and not feel like I'm dying. And so trying to find good session beers.
Yeah, I had 2 pints of that porter I was telling you about, the Porches, and I think and I got home and I was like, and it was after dinner.
Yeah.
But it was like, I'm gonna nap. I don't mean to, but I'm sitting on the couch and it's like, I'm going down for about 20 minutes.
That's what happened to me yesterday. I was doing yard work and I came in and I was like, oh, I'm so thirsty. I'll have a beer, and I was like, that was good. Okay, I'll make lunch.
Yeah.
And then I had another one with lunch, and I was like,
Yep.
Like day over.
But I don't know, man. It is a pleasant relaxation. I mean, seriously, I spend on average, 6 to 12 hours doing this. And
we
normally
do
I'm doing
different
this
things,
seated.
but I do the same thing.
Right. Well, and you get tense, and you're carrying all this stuff, and it was that real pleasure of being like, and my wife drinks wine far more than I do. My dad's a huge wine guy.
Yeah.
But he was the guy who got me into beer, and I think the greatest disappointment of his life is that I'm not a wine guy. I'm just not. I'm a beer guy. And given my choice between wine and beer, I'll go with beer. And there is nothing quite like that end of the day, especially end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does feel sort of like there's a key in a lock, and the beer throws the lock, and you can just sort of go, God. And all of a sudden it becomes very clear why you visit London or whatnot. And at 5 o'clock there are people standing outside of the pubs.
Yeah.
We are done with the day and we're getting on with stuff.
It's actually sad. The only brewery in my town. I keep debating on how much of my actual personal life I interject into these things. So whatever.
It's all anecdotal.
Yeah. I live out in Forest Grove. Love it. Outside the city.
It's pretty.
It's pretty, and there's just something about that sort of rural, small community. For me personally, I love that. I lived in Milwaukee, which I hate. Still hate. Would never ever.
You can see all the iTunes feedback right now.
No, we aren't on iTunes.
Oh,
so.
there you go.
But our
now
only,
you're not gonna be.
Yeah, our only brewery just shut down, and I was just like, oh man, that sucks. It's not like I drank their beer that often.
Yeah.
But just like there's something
What
about
was the brewery?
Off the Rail. They were only on tap in a few places in Portland. It was much more Beaverton, out Washington County way. They did a chocolate stout that was good. What I always used it for was St. Patty's Day and Irish car bombs. Even though it wasn't an Irish beer, the chocolate stout with whiskey is perfect. Speaking of which, the chocolate stout, I'm gonna age the cocoa nibs in whiskey and add it to it to make it a whiskey chocolate stout. I've been debating.
What's the whiskey? Have you decided on your whiskey?
I'm leaning towards Booker's just because it's so strong and because I love it. And the enamel it strips from my teeth.
You got to get a good Irish whiskey. You got to get something like Bushmills.
I'm a huge fan of Redbreast.
I don't know Redbreast.
It's, I guess most of the Irish whiskeys don't use copper stills anymore, but they only use copper. Redbreast.
I've never heard of it.
It is my favorite. It reminds me of a Scotch almost. It's got a little fruitiness to it almost. It's my go-to.
All right, I'm gonna have to try it. I see now we've left the land of beer.
Whatever, it's all grain.
Well, you've now gone to my growing passions, because I used to be a big whiskey and Scotch drinker to the extent that was the go-to gift. I was like, here's a bottle of, here's a bottle of, here's a bottle of, and I started drinking. I started finding or exploring ryes about a year and a half ago.
Have you been to the Pope House?
No.
Pope House Bourbon Lounge.
Where is this?
I'm just gonna make up an address. I can tell you. I can tell you what it's near. It's by the Gypsy.
Okay.
Which also was on my horrible bachelor party night, along with the Pope House. Actually,
that was a long night, was it?
It was a long day. We started with a barbecue in the afternoon, at which I was drinking beer. And then there were points where I was like, oh yeah, I'll drink a beer to slow myself down as I down it and we take off to the next location. But Pope House, I don't think it's only bourbon, but that's the vast majority of what they serve there. It's the most incredible bourbon selection I've ever seen.
I've been just having the High West has a nice selection and stuff. And
they really
I'd found the Templeton Rye about a year and a half ago, and I really like that. And again, like I said, all this stuff comes back to, I guess, parents in some way. My dad got me for my birthday. He got me a rye called Dad's Hat. That never heard of it. Don't know where he finds stuff. Outstanding. One of those ones where you're like, every time you open it, you're like, I don't know how much of this is left.
Yeah. Isn't that disappointing when you're like, oh, there's so little?
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where there's certain things where it's like, there are always 2 bottles. And I actually don't drink that much. It's weird because I'm in a novel right now, and the last novel I wrote, there's that myth of the hard drinking writer.
Yeah.
Most of the times, if I drink and I try to write, the writing is crap. But every now and then I'll hit something where I will block myself. I won't be able to get past it. I did a novel called Private Wars that begins with, I do a lot of research for my books, and I was reading all these Human Rights Commission and Amnesty International reports on torture in Uzbekistan at the time, and I had a sequence at the beginning of this novel that was, and I'm not, I don't write splatter. I don't tend to go in really deep, and I will not. It's just not my style to write, And then taking the rusty pliers, he took his hand and grabbed the fingernail and with a tearing of tendons and a spray. I don't write like that, but I will write. He held his hand down and took the pliers and let you do the rest of the work. You know what I mean? And so for this first chapter, I mean, it was brutal. I was doing horrible things to these people, and I remember, I was up in Vancouver, British Columbia, for a comic book show that I was going to do, and I got in like 2 days early to work, and I ended up walked to a liquor store and I got Bullet. I had some Bullet bourbon, and I was just like,
have you had the Bullet Rye?
I have had the Bullet Rye, and I like it. It's not my favorite.
Yeah,
but I do
good
like
though,
it.
like for
a
price.
Yeah, there's an Oregon rye that I cannot remember the name of that will, I mean, you wave it in front of paint and the paint will retreat. That one's serious business. It's not really interested in flavor as much as it's interested in we're here to do a job and we're going to do it right. But I remember for this book, I had to get a little lit. I had to get a little lit to get through this chapter, and it happened on the novel before this last one. I hit a point about midway where I kept getting in my way. Yeah. And if I was a guy who, if I smoked pot, for instance, I suppose I might have turned to that. Yeah. But I remember, I was like, all right, we're gonna be rewriting after this, but you take a shot, and then it's like, okay, you can shut the voices up for a while and just do the work.
Do you find that in what you do? Like when I create physical pieces of art, I'll always look at it and I always think, oh, there's this that I could do or that.
Yeah, you see every flaw.
It's never done.
No, but that's the same. I mean, there was a guy, the best teacher I ever had in writing said, it's never done. Yeah. I mean, it's never completed. It's only abandoned, and that was him quoting somebody else, I'm sure. Yeah.
Otherwise, that's possibly the most brilliant quote ever.
Well, but it's true. I mean, and any piece of art you can look at, and I know guys, especially in comics. One of my best friends in the world is an artist who lives in town, artist named Matthew Clark, and he's fantastic. But he will noodle a page to death. I mean, he will. There are times when literally you want to go and be like, I'm going to take the pencil, and you're done. The page is finished. And I'm working with another tremendous artist right now, a guy named Michael Lark, who I did a book called Gotham Central with another writer, Ed Brubaker, and Lark and I are doing a book for Image called Lazarus, and he's another one of these perfectionists. He'll go back and he'll go back and he'll go back, and the only thing that seems to get him to step away is really the calendar. He'll look and he'll be like, well, I can keep working on this, but the book has to be in X many days, so I better move on. And I do the same thing with the writing. You produce stuff, you're always going to be your own worst critic. Yeah. It doesn't make it any, that being true doesn't make it any easier when other people decide to criticize it. Yeah. But I think actually that's why exterior criticism can be so painful, because you're already on some level looking at your work and going, I can see everything I did wrong. Yeah. I can see what I wanted it to be and how and how it did not become that thing. Yeah. And the part of that is consistently the most painful is, it's never a lack of aspiration. It's always a lack of execution. Yeah. And it's not as if you did it on purpose. You were trying to create this thing, and for whatever reason, it didn't get there. Yeah. And that's, the one I'm on now has been killing me. And I had, we're not talking about beer now, but I'm not going to shut up either. The book I'm working on now is almost done. I mean, I'm literally in the last stage phases. But this book should have been done so long ago, and everything went wrong. Like, my dad got really ill, and that messed me up far more than I thought it would. I mean, he was very, very ill. And there was other stuff going on professionally and personally, and then all of a sudden it's been, almost 18 months.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I got to get this stuff in order. And, you put so much pressure on it, and you, like I say, you become your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
And different people, I think, have different mechanisms for how you silence those voices. But there is something to be said for external forces to aid the process. The trick, of course, is never find yourself in a position where that becomes the only way you can do it.
Yeah.
Or it becomes the excuse.
That is the artist's brain, though.
Yeah.
I think. At least for me, in everything, really, whether it's doing these podcasts or doing the web series or my personal art or whatever, it's like a weird manic thing where you hit that vein, and once you're tapped in, you're there.
Right, but it takes so long to get into it, and so on.
And how do you stay there?
Well, that's the thing. You have to. I mean, I've gotten to the point now. I say, I end up you have to build a little wall. I build a little wall, so it's like, all right, I work on my laptop, right? So, and I can't shut off my wireless because I rely very heavily on my research.
Yeah.
And so I need to, go out on the interwebs and be like, okay, am I double checking this? And I want to make sure I have this. So I have to sit there and be like, okay, don't open your mail. Don't.
I know,
don't get
Mr. Most interactive with fans possible.
Well, Jesus, and I'm not. I mean, man, I was looking at, Kelly Sue DeConnick and Matt Fraction, both who are here in Portland. You look at their Tumblrs, and I'm just like, where do they get the time to do this? And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, every now and then I'm like, I got to turn it off for a couple days to focus on this damn thing. And then the other thing I found, it used to be I had a set of noise canceling headphones, right?
I hate that when people sneak up on me with those. It freaks
well,
me
see,
the
and
hell
that's
out.
the thing. So I've got, whenever I'm writing, I have to write with my back to something. I'm serious. I can't, I could not work facing this way in this room. I'd have to be in the corner, locked up. And then, I used to be, I'd put the headset on and plug in playlist of innocuous music.
Yeah.
Like, here's Yo-Yo Ma playing cello. Here's, piano music. Here's, jazz. Can't be lyrics anymore. When I was in college, I could blast, anything.
Yeah.
And I'd just, cheerfully right away. The older I get now, and it's gotten to the point now where I'm not even using music. I found this program that was recommended by another writer. It's a little app you can get for 99 cents called Simply Noise. And all it is a white noise generator with an oscillation function. And you can basically pick the spectrums that you want the white noise at.
That's crazy.
It's actually amazing. It is, and I am not, I'm not big on touchy-feely. I get real nervous. I have to, I put out my crystals and I light the incense first. I'm like, okay, if that works for you, but it doesn't work for me. So I viewed this with a certain amount of suspicion. But it's sort of like an ocean wave effect. Yeah. And there are studies that have been done that say, it takes on average about 20 minutes of concentration to get into that flow zone.
Yeah.
And with this, I put this stuff in and it cuts it in half. It kills the outside noise. I find myself really able to focus. I actually find that regular exercise, those are the keys. All of a sudden I write better. I'm able to focus more.
Yeah.
But that being said, I can only ever do it for so long. I can go maybe 3-4 hours at a stretch, and then it's like, then I feel wrung out. It's like, I got to do something where I don't have to think.
Yeah,
That was way off topic.
No,
so
I think
hope you don't mind there.
No, it's good because I was actually trying to steer it around towards you a little bit.
Oh, don't worry. I can talk about me with very little prompting.
So what's funny is, growing up, in the summers, my parents would always, they'd do this incentivizing reading thing for me. Just because they didn't want me to just, I don't know, be stupid.
Well, good for them.
So be like, okay, we'll do this reading program. You can read anything you want. Well, not anything, because I couldn't read comic books. But you can read any book, and if you hit a certain amount of minutes a month, we'll give you $10 at the end of the month.
All right.
And at the time when I was a kid, Costco would sell those flats of comic books for $10 at a time.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I would always get with my money.
I think that's ironic as hell. That they would be like saying, here, you have to read this, but this stuff doesn't count. Here's your money, and then you go buy the stuff that doesn't count. And that's funny, too, because comics...
It worked perfectly for them because I was still just reading all the time.
And comics actually promote literacy.
Yeah.
So the irony there is rather profound.
Well, I think...
But now you're about to make me feel old, right? Because the next part of that story is, so I would buy these flats... And you would have comics in them, and I'd be like, "How old?" And now I have to go, "How old are you?"
Well, that would be interesting. But the depressing thing is, at whatever point, I got rid of most of my comic collection.
I did that too,
and I don't even remember when it happened. But for a long time, like I was out on the fringes. Occasionally, like I'd see a cover, and I'd be like, well, like the cover just would suck me in, and I was like, okay, I have to see it.
Right.
Then I'd read it, and so I'd pick one up here and there. Wasn't that into it, and I read an interview with IGN that you did about Punisher.
Oh man, so that's recent.
And just talking about how you weren't that excited about Frank as a character.
He had never been a character that interested me at all.
And then that you got so into it, and the way that you portrayed him, and then the fan reaction to it, like that whole thing, like, I don't know, for me that was really cool to see, just because I hadn't been into comics in like a serial way for so long, that someone that didn't like a character...
I just had never, he had never clicked with me. Some characters you encounter and they make perfect sense. You look at them and then you're like, yeah, I get them. Batman is a great example of that. It's very hard not to get Batman.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why he's so universal, and it's one of the reasons why so many people go, hey, Batman's my favorite, because he's so easy to get. I mean, he's not... The trick with Batman is always nuance, but he's not hard to understand.
Yeah.
Frank, I always looked at, and the way he was always portrayed has always been, there's always been a political overlay on him that I found distasteful, because I'm a lefty pinko Portland liberal,
You and the rest of us Portland bastards.
It's the way I am. It's the way I was raised. It's how I think. It's honestly, in many cases, I've given more thought to it than just reciting the party line. I have my opinions, but Frank was always he was co-opted and presented as sort of a right-wing, might is right character.
Yeah.
And, I had found that when I first encountered him, and I encountered him in the late 80s, I'd found that really off-putting. Because, in the most part, there are certainly places, there is a place for politics in the four-color world, in the superhero world.
Well, and Captain America, I mean, being...
Well, but see, I would argue, actually, Captain America isn't about politics. Captain America is about an idealism. In the same way that Superman is truth, justice, and the American way isn't him going, and the American way means you voted for Romney.
No, that's absolutely true.
Cap is about the defense of the American ideal. And the best Cap stories, in many ways, are stories where he turns around and he goes, holy Christ, what's happened? So
it's different now, I think, than, Red Skull, Nazi.
Well, and the original...
it started off...
We are a much more sophisticated audience.
The political platform of comics, I always thought, was just an interesting notion
and
because who you're targeting.
yeah, and what are you trying to tell them?
At such an early age, and it's a fun thing for kids.
Right, but now we don't. Now kids don't read comics.
So subversive.
Yeah,
really.
And now, we are in
What an odd
2013,
resurgence.
and now we've got what's the mainstream comic reader is in their 20s. They've come to these things. But getting back to Frank, it was always that sense of the liberal pinko commie socialist justice system is not doing its job, and I will finish them. And I was like, I cannot believe in a Frank who actually gives a rat's ass about that. Well, it's just everything to me, and it doesn't matter if it's comics, if it's the novels, if it's TV, whatever I'm doing. It's always got to be character driven. It's always got to be character based. And Frank. He's another. You take the Batman origin, you give it to Frank because that's very similar.
Yeah.
Hi, I've watched my entire family be wiped out in front of me.
Even worse, really. Like it.
Yeah. And then his response is, well, I'm gonna kill the last one of these sons of bitches. And you know what? When you throw that switch, you don't care who's elected to what.
Yeah.
And you don't care who's in the White House, and it doesn't matter because it is entirely personal. And I don't like, and I always think it's a cop-out when people go, well, this character, this superhero, is actually crazy. And it's like, well, if they're crazy, then they're not responsible for their actions.
Yeah.
And that's not compelling drama.
Yeah.
Saying Batman is insane means that Batman isn't a hero. If Batman does what he does, having considered it, then he's made a choice, and that decision is heroic. And by the same token, the reason that Frank is such an effective anti-hero, I would argue, is that he is absolutely and entirely aware of every choice he's ever made, and every choice he goes on to make. It's not, blah, blah, I will get revenge. It's him being like, no, I have decided somebody has to do this, and the guy who's going to do it's going to be me. And for me to do this, then, I have to make a series of decisions. Every choice I make is driven to that. And that, to me, man, the second you hit that point, just speaking as a writer, you open up a whole world of that character that I find, personally, incredibly compelling. I love stories of sacrifice. I love characters who exist in jobs or positions in their world where to accomplish what they believe they must, there has been an element of sacrifice and self-sacrifice that is not necessarily immediately apparent, but that exacts a heavy toll. There is a price to be paid for being the Punisher.
Yeah.
And it's not simply that, well, if we catch you, we're going to arrest you.
Yeah.
It's, he's given up everything else in his life.
Your version was a lot more calculated than...
He's got to be smart.
Well, no, exactly. You couldn't do the things that he does and not...
Yep.
Like, he's not just going out on crazy murdering sprees, because guess what?
Yeah.
Not only is he not an anti-hero...
Yeah, that's the other thing.
He's a villain.
And you put him also in the Marvel Universe, and the fact is, he gets shot, he falls down and dies. Bullets do not bounce off him. He can't lift up the car. He can't read your mind. He can't shoot laser beams from his eyes. He doesn't have adamantium claws.
Yeah.
One of my favorite.
He's a dude.
Yeah, he's a dude. Now he's in excellent shape.
He's a badass.
Yeah,
but he's a dude.
And you put a gun in his hand, and he can do what a special forces trained soldier can do with a sidearm. The bullet will go where he wants.
Yeah.
He knows how to use all of his tools. But he also knows that if he gets shot, the mission ends.
Yeah.
So, he can't be stupid. And the other thing, and I like, in the last 5-6 years ago, I've done, my writing has veered, especially in the novels, more and more sort of out of the espionage camp and sort of walked into military. And I've been doing a lot of research, and I've talked to a lot of soldiers and so on. And I have, particularly, the respect that I have for these men and women who have, they're doing a job.
Yeah.
But the skill sets required to affect the job are pretty damn impressive.
Yeah.
And some of these people are the smartest people you're going to meet. I mean, these are people who, in many cases, the Army has, or the Navy or the Marines or whoever have sent them off in pursuit of higher education in advanced degrees.
Yeah.
I grew up just outside of Monterey, California. Monterey at that time we had an Army base for the 7th Light Infantry. It was Fort Ord. We had the Naval Postgraduate School there, which tells you everything. The Naval Postgraduate School.
Yeah.
And then we had the Defense Language Institute. We had Monterey Institute of International Studies and the DLI. And DLI was where, I had a teacher in high school who took on as a roommate an FBI agent who was at DLI because he had to learn Sicilian because he was going to be working on the megacrime stuff. So these people, they're not dumb. You know? And they've got $5 million, $10 million worth of training behind them, and they ain't dumb. Frank's not dumb, and he can't afford ever to be dumb because all he has to do is screw up once and it's over. So yeah, I mean, to bring it all the way back around, I was surprised at how much I grew to really adore the character. I mean, how awesome I think he is.
But is that, I have to think that that's the way that you've written him. Because, I mean, truthfully, I think before that, not in a bad way to criticize other people's work, but it's
a different take.
It wasn't impactful in the same way.
Well,
I guess.
I mean,
he wasn't humanized in any way before that, I thought.
It's interesting because I think one of the tricks with my Frank, and I think the big difference between what I did and what a lot of the writers who have in the last 10, 15 years done with him is I just didn't let you inside his head.
Yeah.
So that instead of, especially if you look at Garth Ennis's Max run, which is an excellent run. Garth did a beautiful job, or you look at what Jason Aaron did as well, then there was a clearer window, what's going on, and much like in Gotham Central, the impact on me of Frank was, what does he look like from the outside? Because here's a guy who doesn't have a lot to say, in my opinion. He's not monologuing in his head. He's not going, and now Frank Castle takes his 45 and kicks in the door, and he doesn't have time for it. Everything he's thinking has got to be very, very directed and very mission oriented.
Yeah.
So that a lot of the emotional content and a lot of what's going on in Frank's internal life wasn't readily apparent. You had to provide it.
Yeah.
Because you were seeing it you were outside of it. So, and they say, one of the things you hear often when you're a beginning writer is, show, don't tell.
Yeah.
Right? Show us, don't tell us. Show us what sorrow looks like. Don't tell us that he's sad. And all the nature of the run became a run where all I could do was show you Frank, and all you could see were the reactions around him as a result. But stylistically, my taste, that's my preference. I'd much rather tell the story like that than to get in there and I've got nothing against the first-person narration. It didn't seem to me there was anything I was going to be able to add to what had been said before, what Frank had said in his head before. And I think the other thing is that it gives the deceptive appearance that Frank is not terribly deep, and I think that's absolutely untrue.
Well, when you look at the origin story, how could he not be?
Well, and then I think Matt Fraction went back and gave him a seminary background. He's clearly a thinker. Yeah. And a man who thinks pretty seriously about questions that we in general kind of avoid. Yeah. This is a guy who's actually given some thought about heaven and hell and God and life and death and morality and sacrifice and what those things mean.
Well, and I mean, if you've ever talked to a special forces soldier, they're all pretty well versed
Yeah.
in those topics. Like they, going back to what you're saying, it's not like they're not
They're
well thought or well spoken
Yeah,
people.
and a lot of those guys actually tend to be fairly spiritual in
Yeah.
my experience. They tend to have, they may not view themselves as Christian or Jewish or Muslim or whatnot, but they do tend to see themselves as, or they tend to acknowledge an experience of the world that has led them to conclude that there is more than what they see.
Which is so interesting. Like,
Isn't it? Because in its own way you would think absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you are the being behind the end of a gun, triggering the end of someone else's life, you would, in a very methodical way that they're taught, you would think.
Yeah, you don't actually want to go down that rabbit hole too much.
And here's how we are. Like, it's a straight line there, and it's not.
No, and it's also interesting
or not
that...
for them.
No, and it raises interesting morality questions that clearly they all have to grapple with at different points. So, and I find that fascinating. I've never been put in a position where I've had to kill somebody or been asked to. So whenever I am writing that situation, the best I can do is, come up with it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And the other thing, actually, just as a side note, this is the other reason why I think Frank was so quiet. My experience has been, these guys are not guys who talk about what they do. They don't brag about it. I have a friend in the State Department who described being back in D.C. between tours at one point and getting a call from a soldier he had encountered at one of his posts who said, hey, I'm in town, and I'm in town for tonight. Let's go and have a couple drinks. And as my friend said, so when you get a call like that, you do it. You drop what you're doing, and you blow your plans, and you go out because, number one, there's an expectation you will, and the expectation is there because you don't know if that person's going to be around.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're ever going to see them again. He said they go out and they have a couple drinks at a bar, and he turns to me and says, so, last time you came through wherever it was, place that I will not name. So I took a look at your paperwork, and it says that your MOS is a medic. And the guy said, yeah. He says, yeah, you're not a medic. And the guy says, well, we're all medics. There's a pause. He says, yeah, but you're not a medic. And the guy says, well, let's just say what I can do from about a mile away if there's no wind. I always was like, that tells you everything you need to know. You've pushed me on this. This is the answer I'm going to give you, and the answer I'm going to give you is not the answer.
Aren't we all medics?
Yeah, well, we're all medics. We're all medics. Okay, I believe that. I believe you are all trained as medics. So,
how is it? Like, for me, the thing that's kind of baffling is that in your realm, you work with established characters that other people have written, but not necessarily followed a continuity. I mean, some do, some don't. That to me is kind of just like a baffling thing. Like, how...
It's kind of awesome. I mean, I love... I love collaboration in work. I have never had an idea that was so good it could not benefit from revision or another set of eyes.
Yeah.
Right? And a good collaboration is, and especially in comics, it's energizing. I can't draw to save my life, so any comic I do is by definition collaborative anyway. But the other thing I like, and one of the reasons I love comics in particular, is that there's inherent structure. And, there's the structure of the book. It used to be 22, now it's 20 pages, right? And you have to, in those 20 pages, and however many panels you're going to get out of those 20 pages, get the story from point A to point B and accomplish certain things along the road. And it's like chess in that sense. And I love that. But, when somebody hands you the keys to a character that has a legacy and has this history, you have the benefit of all the people who came before, all of those ideas, all of that talent, all of that history, And that feeds it. It can be paralytic, I think, if you spend too much time going, "Oh my God, it's Batman."
See,
and
that's
it's 70 years.
obviously
of it.
that from an outsider. That's how I look at
but,
it.
But here's the irony of writing, and maybe the irony of all of all art, which is if I didn't want you to read it, I wouldn't publish. So there is some element of every writer, despite what they say, that is both insecure, "Oh my God, what happens if they hate it? I'm no good, it's never going to be good enough," and also arrogant as hell, which says, "No, what I'm doing is worth reading." And you have to find that arrogance, because otherwise you will be overwhelmed. You'll go, "Oh my God, it's Superman! How am I going to put words in Superman's mouth?" If you think about that too long, you never do. So at a certain point, you have to cut it off, and you have to be like, "You know what? I got the job. They gave me the job because they thought I could do it." And every writer will rationalize how they got that job. I got the job because I was in the right place at the right time. I got the job because I am good. I got the job because they took pity on me. I got the job because I have a friend. However you get there, you've got the job, and once you do, you either shit or you get off the pot.
Yeah.
So, and it's weird, with the really big characters, and I love Frank, but Frank is not really an A-list character. He's strong B-list, but
Yeah.
he's not a Superman or a Wonder Woman or a Batman. He's not there are a lot of people know who the Punisher is. Everybody knows who Superman is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oddly, I felt more pressure on Frank's legacy than I ever did on Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman.
Really?
Yeah, and it might simply have been an issue of defensive ego. That when I got the chance to write those other characters, I was very much like, yeah, you know what, roll up the sleeves, and this is my take. I'm gonna do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And with Frank, I was really aware of a very passionate and educated fan base about the character. And I was aware that some of the things I wanted to say about him were maybe, they weren't controversial, but I was saying them in a way that they might not like. And people forget, we went almost 4 issues before Frank said anything.
Which is incredible.
And people were pissed. They were not happy. They were like, "Why isn't he saying anything? Why isn't he, why isn't he?" And all I could think is, who's he got to talk to? This is not a guy who's going to be like, "Hi, how are you today? Tell me, what do you think of our weather? How about those Mets?" He's not.
Well,
he's not chatty Cathy.
Not small talk. Like, how do you discuss the things that he's doing with anyone, period?
And who's he going to talk to? And that was why
Yeah.
taking away that internal narration made him really, really quiet. But, and I remember that first issue and that second, when that second issue came out, people were like, "Why isn't he saying anything yet?" This is really, and I remember I saw somebody's criticism, and I don't tend to look online. It's a bad habit. I think it is a mistake to go searching out the comments.
Yeah.
Because stuff like that, at least for me, that'll eat my brain. It will knock me right out of my stride, and I'll start obsessing about it. But I saw somebody by the second issue saying, "Why the hell isn't he talking? This is so boring." I was like, never mind the fact that comics are a visual medium, right? The story is entirely visual.
Yeah.
Never mind that. It's just like, this was the take on the character. And I could not, and I tried. People, I'm not sure people understand that there is a lot of thought that goes into these decisions, and I really gave it a lot of thought. I was like, he just doesn't have anything to say to anybody. What is he going to say? Who does he talk to? And the other thing that was going on there, we're spending a lot of time talking about Frank, I apologize.
No, that's good.
But the other thing that was going on there was, going back to that issue of all the things that were sacrificed to do the job and so on. One of the things that I wanted to show was that to do what he does, he has nobody.
Yeah.
He has had to divorce himself from almost every human interaction. That's why Cole, as a character, was so crucial, that she show up and she invades that space for him, and he does not like it. He's like, get out, get out. I don't want you here. And it's not, I don't want you here because you're a woman, or I don't want you here because you're another soldier. It's simply like, I cannot afford this. Like, you know, an emotional connection with any individual on any level is a liability for me. It's a distraction.
And it humanizes him in a completely different way. Like, if you think about what he's going through, he's dehumanized himself in a way that's not
he's
inhuman, but desensitized maybe
yeah,
is better.
He is, but that's exactly it, because what he's done is he's divorced himself.
Yeah.
And then he's had to seal himself off.
And you can,
and then here
you can
comes
do
somebody,
your job
right,
inside that
yeah,
box.
That's exactly it. I made a box for myself, and in this box there is no color, there is no music, there is no joy, there are no friends, there are no tears. There's the memory of my wife and my children and my mission, and that is it. Mm-hmm. And then here comes somebody, and they go knock, 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 and it's like, there's nobody out there. Stop knocking. It's like, knock, knock, knock. And the second that happens, it threatens everything.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why he's so hostile towards Cole initially, and why he's so guarded as well. It's not. It isn't an issue of, this is my thing and you can't have it, because that would imply a selfishness to Frank that's just absurd.
Yeah.
And an ego that I don't think is there. It simply is, I can't do this. Don't do this. And it's interesting that, I mean, if you read the whole Punisher run, and you read all of Warzone, the end of Warzone is really a result of what happens when he lets somebody in. He let Cole in, and as a result of letting Cole in, the mission resolves his, he ends up in a place where he's behind bars. And he makes, that's a choice he does willingly. So, yeah. It's interesting, but, there are a few books I've ever left. Most of the books I get fired from one way or another. There was more to do with Frank that I really do kind of wish that we'd had the opportunity to do. The danger in working on any work-for-hire character, be it Punisher or Spider-Man or Superman or whatnot, you don't own them. They're the publishers, and the publisher gets to say, you know what, we love what you did, but we really, really want to turn him into a St. Bernard, and we want to have him running secret missions out of the Alps, okay? And to do that, we've hired this guy, and you can only go, okay? It's your choice,
That's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, St. Bernard Punisher would be crazy. Get a skull on that big cask of whiskey.
Well,
the brandy cask.
I mean, now we're about to head off on a tangent that you never expected. I own an English Mastiff.
Oh, yes?
And I don't know if you follow Archer at all.
Yes.
Oh, God, the last episode of Archer had an English Mastiff. Hands down, best episode ever. I'm just...
no bias. Right.
I watch it during work on Fridays. Just about.
Is that casual Fridays?
Well, it is casual Fridays, but I don't think that's
casual?
part of
it's
it.
Not supposed to be that.
Pissed my pants. Oh, God, I hope not. I'm not even kidding when I say I just about pissed my pants laughing in my cubicle. I've got my headphones on, and I'm laughing out loud, and the two people that I share this monster cubicle with are just looking at me like, he's finally lost.
Yeah, it's over
like,
now.
We should get out of the office before he kills us all. Oh my God. I was laughing so hard at that just because it's all so true. If you have a giant dog, it's the funniest thing ever. So, off of a random tangent.
Yes.
As an artist,
yes,
and relating back to beer, I think there's, especially in Portland, there's a big kind of struggle between what's an artisanal brewery and what's a craft brewery, and finding that perfect medium.
Yeah, I have no idea what the distinction would be. I mean, is an artisanal brewery is what? It's one guy.
When David and I came in, we were kind of talking about it, and I'd said, it's funny how there are guys like Gigantic, they brewed a chocolate IPA.
Uh-huh.
Sounds crazy.
Right.
But they've put the time and effort in and are well respected in the beer community.
Right.
So that,
People will give it a try.
Yeah, and it's not like a frowned upon, like, what are these ass clowns doing?
Right.
Like, but then there was after a Timbers game, I went over to Hot Lips Pizza, which, by the way, if you're there until close, they'll sell you a full pizza for $5.
Okay, this is good to know.
Maybe I shouldn't put that on the podcast. It's awesome. Could not have been more stoked that my night on the Max ended with me
pizza.
holding
Yes.
a full pizza. And I ate half of it before I got home, which wasn't intended, but
it's a Hot Lips Pizza.
yeah. They had
It does happen.
I think it was there. They had a graham cracker chocolate stout or graham cracker s'more stout, something like that.
Okay.
And you read the name, and by default, the first thought's like, is it gonna taste like a s'more?
Yeah.
Holy shit! I have to try this.
What is a s'more beer? Yes.
And it didn't
Yeah.
taste like that at all. And I don't even remember who brewed it, so it's not like I'm, dismissing what they did. But I think there's that struggle between, being creative and trying something new versus just making a really good fucking beer.
Well,
and
but isn't that? I mean, one would hope that instead of it being instead of trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? You want the product to be good. If you can get attention because you make good product, but I always, what? I don't want a stunt beer. Don't give me a stunt beer. I don't need M&Ms and framboise. It's like, okay, if you need it, pear and chicken. I'm glad you found a way to combine these flavors in a beer. Not really one I felt was necessary.
Okay, here's my caveat to that point.
How many bacon beers have you tried at this point? Because bacon now is,
One.
Yeah.
Only one.
Bacon's everywhere.
The bacon maple voodoo.
Yeah, the voodoo, the rogue.
Not my cup of tea.
No.
I won't. Well, okay, so an even bigger caveat to the whole thing with the web series is I think it's pretentious for me to go and review somebody's beers.
Yeah.
That's not the point of the web series. It's to tell their stories, what makes them different, and highlight of the people behind it.
And I think part of the nature of certainly of craft brewing is that it's like so many other things. You can't. What is a joy for one person is, misery for somebody else.
And even with taste, it's even more subjective,
Exactly.
I think. Like, I can say, not for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say not for you.
Not for you. That's exactly it.
You might like it. Like, it's not...
I know what I thought of it.
For me to discourage you to even go from trying it, like...
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There are a few things I feel that you can empirically say, At a certain point, I think if you love your beer, then you are not going to say, yes, I am a fan of certain other mass-produced things that one can buy, that serve a purpose less of being beer and more of being an instrument towards inebriation. But no, I mean, in the main, that's the thing. I think this is terrific, right? This is a great beer. I know that were I to give it to my wife, for instance, she would be like, you know what, it's not my thing. It doesn't mean she's wrong,
Not her thing, though.
Yep.
And well within her rights to say that.
Exactly, and you can't knock that.
So my caveat, the first one.
Yeah, caveat one.
Yeah, was going to be I tried a beer that had heart in it. Brewed with hearts.
Heart, literal heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beef hearts.
Yes, I would assume not human.
Not
hearts.
human.
Yeah, no, that's problematic.
Make that clear.
That's problematic. Yes.
And obviously, I tried it for the
novelty of it.
I'll say novelty because it's not something most people have even eaten.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
I've eaten heart.
Yeah.
I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say most hunters have. And so tasting the beer, my thought was, can you actually taste the heart?
Right.
Not, is it even a good beer?
Right.
Was a complete,
That's secondary.
separate thing. And you could,
Huh.
if you've tasted heart.
Uh-huh.
If
you
had-
knew what you were tasting
If you
for,
had never had heart before,
you wouldn't know.
never have put a finger on it.
Huh.
You might have said, it's minerally, but that's it.
Huh.
You would never have said, tastes like heart.
Yeah, that's beef heart.
And so, in that way, I actually thought, kind of a novelty thing. I really hope that's not a bird trapped in here.
Yeah, I have no idea what's chirping.
Keeps happening.
Is the mic picking it up? Are you picking? Hello, Mike.
I hope so.
There's been this occasional chirp. It happens every 15, 20 minutes, which makes you think it's not actually a bird.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Somebody left a cell phone behind or something.
But, not novelty, because if you've tasted it, you can identify it, you know what it tastes like.
Right.
I guess mission completed.
Yeah.
But not a bad beer either, necessarily.
Yeah.
It's not something that I imagine, they would bottle and market to the world. But I think there's just such a fine line between that artisanal versus craft, and I mean in everything really. I don't think it's just beer. Like being technically proficient at what you do is great, but without vision,
Yeah.
where does that lead you?
There's a certain point where technical proficiency has to meet artistry.
And if
Or
all you've got
or
is creativity,
at least. Yeah.
but the lack of technical output to create it,
But
you're
see,
like,
I mean,
oh.
the one can be acquired. The other is much harder, I think, to hone.
That's true.
You can encourage imagination. You can't teach it.
Can't teach it.
You can teach technical expertise. You can tell me, okay, Greg, this is the way you're going to craft the beer. You have to sterilize your equipment in this way at this time. You need to apply. You will measure this amount of X to this amount of Y to this amount of Z, and you will add this much sugar. You will check on, these days you are looking for these results. That's technical, but it does not give it heart, metaphorically or not. So, it's interesting. I encounter that in writing all the time. You can teach people the actual rules of writing. You can even show them stories and say, and there are people who make very good livings, selling advertising and seminars on, I will teach you how to write. And then they will take things like Casablanca or Star Wars or The Matrix or whatnot, and they will break it down and tell you this is what your movie needs to have to be good. I hate checklist writing. Yeah. I love structure, but I hate checklist writing. I mean, I think and one of the hardest things I think to teach, because I'm not sure you can teach it, and I think it has to be learned with experience, is at what point does structure have to give way to creativity or artistry in that sense?
Yeah.
So now
All right.
we're rambling.
Well, I'd argue that this entire podcast
This is exactly what the podcast is about.
Is a ramble. Entirely lost my train of thought.
That's all right. We're good. I think we've gone for quite a while, actually. So.
Hey, Devin, how long do you think we've been going?
It's about an hour and 15.
Holy shit! All right.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'm probably being ticketed as we speak.
Jesus. Well, okay. So you say that.
So it's been nice. I gotta go.
It's funny. We pull into the parking lot, And I'm like, oh, I've got this ticket. I'll put it in my window. So I put it right next to my driver's side window. Motherfucker drops straight down to the bottom of the thing. I walk up to the lady. I'm like, hey, can I push the button and get another ticket? She goes, no, your car has to be on there for it to dispense a ticket. She's like, you can tell them at what time you parked. I'm like, good, so they can charge me for the whole day.
They'll love me. They'll love me for that.
Oh. All right.
Yeah, you know what?
Thank you very much.
No, you still have.
Anytime you want to come on and do a podcast, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, we'll start planning it in the next 6 months.
The next 6
roughly coming up on your 2nd year anniversary, I'll be there.
Portland, next pint's on us.
Thank you very much.